In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to assemble the frame for a pan tilt assembly. And here are the parts we'll be needing for this. We have, of course, a couple of micro servos that we'll be using for the pan and tilt motion. We have, you need a screwdriver. Generally with the servos you get an assortment of servo horns or connections. Depending on which types of horns you may have received with your servo, you may need to cut a couple of them to actually fit into the assembly. So we'll talk about that shortly when we get to the actual assembly. Here's the pan tilt brackets that I got, and I will post a link to these in the resources section of the video. So it actually comes with 4 pieces that you'll need to put together. Alright, and also you should get an assortment of screws that you would definitely need to put everything together. So those are all the parts that you will be needing for the construction of the frame. I must admit there is not a whole lot of documentation out there on this, so it's not the most intuitive, but I'm going to go through it step by step to hopefully make it clear on exactly how everything is connected together. Okay, so first we're going to start with the actual base of the assembly, and what you'll need here is actually a servo horn sort of in a cross shape. Some of the servo kits do not come with a horn that fits exactly in here, so the closest that I have in the collection of servo horns that I got was this particular one, and as you can see, it cannot fit exactly in here. So what we'll need to do is we'll actually have to cut off the ends. You can cut off the ends probably, you know, about around here up to 3 or 4 notches. You'll have to cut it. You can cut it with an X-Acto knife or a scissors or any tool that you have, and once you cut it, then we should be able to actually fit it in here. Okay, so I'm going to actually try to use a scissors here to cut that, or you can use a X-Acto knife or whatever you may have. So I'm going to cut that. Alright, so that's one that's cut. I'll cut the other end, and I left about 3 holes, basically about 3 holes. I'll just trim that a little bit more. Okay. So there, when it's cut, we're going to try to see if we can fit it in now into the assembly. Alright, so as you can see, it needs to be cut a little bit more to fit in. So I'll just trim that up a little more. Also, what you'll notice is sometimes it might be a little bit too wide, so we actually have to trim these to make them a little narrower. So you can use an X-Acto knife and you can trim these. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, as you'll see, I managed to trim the edges and kind of was able to get it down to size. Now I can fit it in the assembly itself. And as you can see, now it fits in there nice and snug. So now we have to actually screw this in place, and there would be some tiny screws that you can use that would come with part of your kit, very, very tiny. And we're gonna screw those in to hold this horn in place. So I'm gonna try to get that done. You know, it's very tiny. So you're gonna put a screw on each of the edges, one screw on this particular side here, on the other side, and each of the four corners where you see the actual holes, you have to put those screws in. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Alright, so I'm putting in the last of the screws in there. I'm going to screw this in. Okay, so that's all done. So as you can see, there are 4 screws in there, and now that horn is securely in place. Alright, so next we'll take the actual one of the servos, and what I've done is I've just put some tape around this servo just to make it fit a little more snugly in place. And you're going to take the actual end of the servo and you're going to push that into the servo horn. Alright, make sure it's in place, and now that's securely connected. So that is the base of our pan tilt swivel. Next, we're going to take these 2 parts and we're going to wrap these around the servo. So one on this side and one on the other side, so it should fit, you know, snugly together. As I said, by including that tape around the servo, it actually helps to make sure it fits more snugly. And then you'll notice that there are a couple of screws that you can screw in to make sure that these are firmly in place. So I'm going to use a couple of those screws. So when you're connecting these screws to this these 2 holes, look for those screws that have that serrated edge. Alright, so they look like these. So I'll go ahead and connect those. Alright, and they should tighten them up. Alright, so now that should hold our assembly in place, the base there. So next, after connecting the base servo, we have to connect the top servo to the actual top bracket that actually does the tilting. So this is how you have to line it up. You actually take the servo and place it in, alright, with the circular hole on this side, flat side of the servo, and you'll notice that it lines up for a couple of screws to be put in place. Alright. When you're connecting the top servo, you want to make sure that it's in place, and before you screw anything in, you should make sure that the 2 pieces connect together first. That's gonna save you some trouble, and once that's in place, then you can proceed to screw in these top connections to firmly secure the top servo to the bracket. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Alright, so that's one of the screws, and there's another screw that goes in on the other side. Gonna have to move things a little bit around to get to it, but here you go. Screw that in. And once that's in place, we're almost done. We take a servo horn and we connect that servo horn. It should fit nicely in the actual bracket here, and then there's one more screw that we have to apply here to secure that horn to the servo. So I'll go ahead and screw that in place. Alright, so that should complete our assembly for our pan tilt. As you can see, the base sort of came out when I was moving stuff around, so I'll just go ahead and secure that in. So there you have it. Alright, this is the base. This will do actually the panning, and the top will do the actual tilting. Right, so there is our pan tilt assembly with our 2 servo motors, and everything should be all hooked up together nicely.